Welcome to the session that we have today to dive deep on Acquia CDP. I'm joined today by Hannah Smith from MCM, and together we're going to talk about how marketers on her team and MCM are using data and analytics to really transform the organization. My name is Karen Wood. I'm the Senior Director of Product Marketing here at Acquia, focusing on Marketing Cloud and Acquia CDP. And Hannah, thank you so much for joining. Super thrilled to dig into it. I thought we'd start with a little bit of an introduction of yourself. So if you could just say a few words about who you are and your role at MCM and your background, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Karen. So I'm Hannah Smith. I'm the Senior Manager of Global CRM Solutions for MCM Worldwide. And basically what that means is I kind of help run the point between making sure that solutions that we put in store, technical solutions that we put in store, or technical solutions that we put in field are working in a right way for our internal end user business.
Super. So let's dig into the CDP project a little bit. So I know that it was an inherited initiative for you. How did you become the internal champion for Acquia CDP within MCM?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great question. Well, Acquia CDP was fully deployed when I joined my tenure at MCM. So in terms of inheriting the project, I mean, I had a quick ramp up to learn. I would be remiss if I didn't stop and say that that would not have been possible without the support of our Acquia partnership. There was it's a great group of people that really helped bring me up to speed and tell me what they knew about what had happened previous to my tenure at the company. Um, I can tell you that the early goal with CDP after we kind of, okay, like, right, let's get a lay of the landscape. Where are we at? How are we using it? Who's using it? Who knows about it? Was to really drive engagement and identify key users in each of the regions. We kind of took this on as like an empowerment project so that everyone was getting equal benefit across the organization. I think the other thing too is that we really tried to focus on, okay, so now we have this, which gives us kind of a centralized like data center, for lack of a more eloquent term. So in terms of that, if it's centralized, how do we keep something that's centralized but also see the benefits cross-border?
Yeah, I love that as an empowerment project because truly it sounds like lots of folks across the organization have been able to leverage the CDP in lots of different ways. One
Mm-hmm.
thing I want to dig into about that in particular is, you've mentioned to me before that for MCM, it always comes back to who is your customer? How can serve your customer and understand that customer? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, just that concept and how empowering the organization around the CDP and knowing the customer has made an impact on MCM.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, and to be fair, like in my background, analytics was something I used, but not something I owned. And so inheriting the project, right? We're going to drive engagement. We're going to empower the regions. And I don't think that data is always something that's thought of in a like flashy way, right? When we hear the word data and analytics, we start to think about numbers. Numbers and KPIs is the lifeblood of any organization. There is a way, to your point, to make it a little bit more romantic. And for us, that was looking at, okay, so who is the customer? How can we romanticize the data so that it feels more alive, maybe is the word for it, right? Like, what is the data beyond the KPI? What is the data beyond the number? And so for us, that was kind of this concept of like personas in terms of, okay, so we have all these numbers, but if we put the numbers into a holistic snapshot of this, who is the customer? Like, what does that tell us about the customer? Like, when we look at that, what do we see across border? What do we see in a region, but across channel? So really taking a look at how those personas develop. We also, spent a lot of time talking about what we assumed about the data. And then the more comfortable I, of course, got with it, the more I was able to say, well, wait a minute. We assumed the following, but what we're really seeing in the data now that we've kind of fleshed it out and kind of like been in there and gotten our feet wet with the data is we're actually seeing, a little bit of a difference in terms of things. This can be something as simple as you're looking at a KPI and this KPI has always been what it is, and this was something that specifically happened to me, but then realizing that the tech you own is defaulting to a setting. And so your KPI is skewed because your default setting is XYZ. So that was a big eye opener for us and really allowed us to take the CDP not just from a KPI and data and analytics perspective, or how do we market or how do we segment, but looking at it and saying, wait, how do we also then improve our end user experience in terms of other systems that CDP touches? So that was another one for us. And then again, I would celebrate the Acquia team here and say, Acquia came to me and said, we think we can help you with some machine learning components. And that was, of course, very new to me because, again, full disclosure, I didn't have a lot of background in machine learning. And so when I first heard of this, my thought was algorithm equals does not compute. I'm not going to be able to handle or understand this. But what I found very quickly was I don't have to understand the algorithm necessarily. I don't have to understand every X, 1, 2, and 3 that went into it. I can leverage that to, again, empower how we're looking at personas, how we're looking at data, what we're doing with the data, what assumptions we can challenge.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up machine learning as it pertains to personas. Obviously with Acquia CDP, I've talked about this on some other sessions. Our machine learning helps make it more efficient to do more exact targeting with persona-based marketing, with segmentation, et cetera. Can you share a little bit more about how you're using machine learning, or even how the impact of using machine learning in the ways that you just described has had an impact across the different teams that are now leveraging it?
Yeah, of course. So for us, for MCM, we have a couple of different things. The first one that we ran with was Likely to Buy. This one was a very easily adoptable machine learning for us. And we also have in there product clusters. And the product clusters, to be completely transparent, I'm really selling myself out here. I found them the most interesting. Because of my background, because of my experience in retail leadership, I was like, wait, why do people buy what they buy? Ooh, how are they buying next, right? So for me, that was really powerful data. My background in marketing also led me to be like, well, wait a minute. If we know what they're buying and when they're buying, and we know their likeliness to buy, we can start to then look at what can we complement that we're not marketing. How can we start to look at, bundles? What can we start to do in terms of migrating the customer down the product line? So for us, those were the kind of the key ones: machine learning, Likely to Buy, and machine learning product clusters. And then we added cohort analysis, which the funny thing about cohort analysis was it had always existed. I just hadn't thought to ask about it. And when I asked randomly about it, it opened a whole new door, right? Because now it's me harnessing this power, taking it out to our regions and saying, you too can, with very little expertise, harness this power. Oh, and wait, you can test all your theories with literally the toggle of a button. Just turn on cohort analysis, and then here's your cohort. And now set your time frame and look back and see, how did your theory work? So, right, it was kind of this natural progression of looking at, okay, we have all this data. We don't know how we want to use it differently, but we know we want to empower people and drive engagement. Okay, so now we've put some machine learning into place to help this centralized system kind of empower these teams. And now we're going to turn on cohort analysis so that everything we just taught you and asked you to engage with, you can track and prove the value of very easily.
Yeah, really cool. So you've talked a little bit about this as an empowerment project, and obviously some of the things you're describing, you really have been a true evangelist for the initiative and really kind of winning over hearts and minds of different teams across the organization. What are some of the biggest impacts that these teams have found, or that you've learned throughout this process?
Yeah. It's interesting to watch the regional marketing teams and global content teams kind of dig in and get as excited about it as I did. That's always the goal, right? Is that your end user feels as comfortable or as excited about it as you do. So for us, again, we took some strong partnership in terms of looking at, okay, so if this is what's in place, what can we build on that? And we saw that it was of course, segmenting the markets to push out was very easy. But what I started to watch happen, the evolvement of that was sort of like, okay, well, we're already segmenting it. So how can we segment it and use the product cluster and create a dynamic product grid of bestsellers to target this complementary offering, right? So like it was watching the teams start to create these layers where they weren't just using one feature of the CDP and they weren't just going to the CDP for a number pull, but they were starting to think very holistically about if we stack these things out, what can we get? It also allowed us to really easily bifurcate our channels of data and encourage like both sides to look at it. So we were taking a true omni approach. So that was really amazing to watch happen because I think, you know, depending on how much tenure you have on a team, the reality is sometimes you think very much in your wheelhouse versus how can I think in my wheelhouse but also dynamically think about what's maybe not in my wheelhouse. So for us, that was looking at like, how do we include the use of this digital tool, this traditionally digital tool, let me say, to really touch our retail teams, like our brick and mortar teams and support them in a new and interesting way. And again, I kind of alluded to it, but I personally have a lot of retail experience. So for me, that's a passion project, right? So again, it was about like kind of thinking of the CDP as an empowerment project. And it's like, but if you have a passion for this and the data is sitting there, what can you do to leverage that data? So for us, it was looking at, well, who are we missing in the data? Who are we maybe not looking at in a, let's say, I'm going to say in air quotes, digital way because we don't see them as a digital shopper, and how are we leveraging that data in a non-traditional sense. So I can tell you that that's really taken off for us in terms of, you know, assisting retail with a traditionally digital tool.
Yeah, really cool. Well, I know that we only have a little bit of time left, so I'd like to ask one more question, which is, what would you share, given your journey with Acquia CDP and just your knowledge with all that you've learned over the past couple of years with the project, what would you share to someone just embarking on a CDP initiative or thinking about getting started with a CDP?
Well, the first thing I would say is don't let my discussions of machine learning panic you, right? Like just start with the basics. And that's not to say that the high level stuff won't come or that you're not capable of the high level stuff, but like getting that first piece right and really again being an evangelist for this is why centralization can help our efficiency. This is why you're going to get more value from your data because you're going to be forced to look at it in a way you haven't looked at it before. You're going to save time, which gives you more time to think about that evolvement I was speaking to, that like layering of kind of segments, the layering of different features within inside a CDP so that you're looking at, okay, well now I've done this, so how now I can go on and test my theory. I think traditionally, like, and especially for me early on, I was just like, right, segment, push out, segment, push out, segment, push out. But now we've kind of gotten to a place, you know, so far post implementation that it's segment, think about 6 ways to test it, include 2 machine learnings, and now push out, right? And so for me, I think in those early stages, it's trust the process, start at the very beginning, and then, you know, be prepared to move at a quick pace to those things that are going to add that complexity to your CDP.
Well, great advice. Hannah, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate all of your insights. You're a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for participating. And to all of you, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.